Let's before I melt too. This is TechnoCast with we don't know what the hell's going on, but we're trying. James may show up in 15 or 20 minutes. We don't know. Like Jordan, you were. I agree with you on that nVidia thing, but on the other hand, I'm not sure the internet's entirely blowing it out of proportion for the reason I told you. nVidia is poised to be a very critical, they're making some of the most desirable ARM system-on-chip systems there are, at least right now.
Well, the Tegra is about the only thing they have. As soon as ATI, aka AMD, comes up with something better, they're kind of dinked on more than one front.
What about stuff like the Kal-El?
I haven't digged into that one, but I'm going to put it this way. I mean, on the mobile market is something entirely different. I'll say this though, like on the desktop market, it is so bad that their drivers for Windows have caused cards to blow up. Their drivers in Linux are complete crap. For the most part, especially as of version 270. It's so bad that I went back to running ATI's open source driver on my 4650 HD just to get stability back up.
Well, I'm not even talking about the graphics cards. I mean, I'm thinking the whole industry's fixing to switch over to system on chips, and I don't think they're going to be going with Intel's. I think they're going to be going with various versions of ARM system on chips, like the Kal-El or whatever counter-bid other ARM manufacturers make. In which case, you know, it's conceivable in 2 to 5 years, you're not going to be looking for that new Intel chip. You're going to be looking for that Jarrell or the Xylon or whatever the heck they call these ARM processors. I mean,
for the low price market, they might try Via's quad core that they just came out with not that long ago. I forget the name of that one. And they do have that on I believe on an ITX and maybe even on a micro ATX platform with a PCI EX16 slot available and a PCI slot or two, where you can throw a decent graphics card in it and make it do something useful. But that's only going to be any good for the embedded market and the extreme low-cost desktop or appliance market, because nothing beats a 64-bit x86 64 processor for math-intense computing or just major gaming, because these ARM chips just can't cut it. There may be a third of the performance, maybe a half, on the most powerful ARM chips they have right now. They don't compare yet.
The ones they have right now, keep in mind I said 2 to 5 years. You're counting another 1 to 2 cycles of Moore's Law. And, hello operator, dial number 5.
That isn't on my end.
No, that's something going on Jordan's end.
Was it?
Yeah.
Odd.
You're pushing buttons and I'm hearing phone tones.
I'm about to put my foot in my DVD drive's ass.
Sorry about that. I leaned over. I guess I must have hit the keyboard.
Okay.
Well, at least I can hear Jordan now.
It wasn't saying anything a second ago. Everybody's comparing ARM to the x86 right now. My honest thinking on that is another 1 to 2 cycles. I really do think for what the average end user cares about, they're going to be on par. For making desktop systems the end user would going to buy. I'm hoping we don't get the same crap going on there like you're talking about with the nVidia cards right now. And that's one of the things I'm not sure the internet going nuts about Microsoft having veto say on if nVidia gets sell. Like Jordan said in the email he sent me, the reason for that was protection to deal with an Xbox deal. Microsoft basically didn't want to be screwed if ownership changed and then the Xbox couldn't be manufactured, right? Is that basically what the original deal was?
As far as I understand, yeah, that was one of those, if someone else decides they're going to swoop in and just take nVidia or take a large portion of nVidia, Microsoft could say, wait a minute, and then offer the same amount and get it first.
Right, but one of the things like I said, nVidia is real poised to give Intel a run for their money in the next few years here as we do this change of, you know, what a computing device is and what type of computing 85% plus of people are doing. There's some, it's because as far as I understand, this is an open-ended agreement. It's basically, there's no like time limit on it or anything where it just expires one day and then NVIDIA is free and clear of this indefinitely.
As far as I know, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like this is a market that's now of interest to Microsoft with the direction they're going. And like you say, I want NVIDIA to go back to having good Linux support again, as opposed to this like they're having where some cards work, some cards don't. Like you're saying, in the last 12 to 18 months or so, we've kind of watched it do a 180. In some cases, you're better off to use an ATI card with the open drivers than the old standby of NVIDIA's, and that wasn't the way it used to be. I'd like it to go back the other way, thank you. Alright, let me see. This is not the only reason I put this patent thing. It's really more PC versus Mac, is because there's not. Let's get on topic since we're short for time this week. Open versus open, user friendly versus power users. This is a complex topic. This is an industry-wide thing going on right now that essentially the industry is trying to figure out how to turn a computer into one giant simple button. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Where I have a problem is when trying to turn it into one giant super button says, I can't be a geeky user, I'm not allowed to have control of my system, I'm not allowed to tweak the UI, I'm not allowed to put things where I want them because I want them there, and so on and so on and so forth. What's y'all's opinion on this? And B, do you think you really have to choose between the two? I mean, do you think you have to make the compromise? Is there any reason that you can't have the shiny big button?
I think a lot of the existing problem with customizability and geekiness in these newer systems has to do with just the relative age of them. GNOME 3 and Unity, for example, at this point are really, really young products, so they don't have quite the customizability that the earlier versions of desktop environments might have. So as time progresses, that will be added back in. Extensions, for example, in GNOME Shell, every day there's a new one coming out that adds new functionality or adds old functionality back. So it's just a matter of time, another year, another 2 years, and things should be really interesting. In terms of the geeky user, GNOME Shell seems to be a great place to be because there is that level of customizability if you know how to rewrite things for the back end.
Okay, so you have to be the really geeky user, not just the power user, which is the...
It's not even that you have to be really geeky, it's all JavaScript and CSS, so it's not really that big of a deal. That's why there are so many extensions coming out right now.
Jordan, I know professional web developers that for some insane reason don't know JavaScript and CSS. It's like they become dependent on application X to edit it, and I'm like...
It's actually... Okay, well, for the end user that doesn't know much about a computer, it's a little bit harder. For somebody who can open a text file, take a look at something and say, hey, this is icon size, okay, edit that. Hey, this is this shit, edit that. It's not that bad. For people who can tweak, people who are power users, more than power users, people who like to play with their system, that's good for them. The thing is, that's not the point. The thing about GNOME Shell is, A, it's got much of a better chance than Unity, because Unity's trashed due to the fact that it relies on compiz, which is still a dick with too many video chipsets, and doesn't even work hardly at all on open source drivers, especially NoVal, which is trash anyway. But even the ATI open source drivers, it still has some trouble with on a lot of chipsets. Whereas GNOME Shell is like, lol, we don't care, it works. Or you have the fallback mode if you have to run it that way in an emergency. But most of the time, GNOME Shell will pick up and run pretty well. The only time it has a problem with is with ATI's proprietary drivers, which are shit anyway, and the nVidia 270 drivers, which are also shit, but that's a mixed bag depending on the card you run.
Well, there are some exceptions to that. I mean, I have a ThinkPad sitting down here that has an ATI card in it, and compiz worked beautifully for me on it. You know, I had to go get the actual driver for my ATI card from the repo, but as soon as I did that, it ran as smooth as it has on any system I've ever run it on. You know, just sharp, clean.
Watch your RAM usage on that, and then tell me different. The other thing is, not every chipset's that way, but a lot of them are. ATI drivers like to whore RAM. Like
it only had 512. The system literally only had 512 of internal RAM, you know, and it was running KDE 4. So I mean, I think it was being efficient enough, you know.
Either way, the other thing is still being on that Compass back end. Try messing with different 3D stuff and see how much tearing you get with different stuff that you do.
That was the thing. I was surprised. I wasn't getting tearing at all. And on desktop systems, I usually want 1 to 2 gig. I was surprised it was able to rotate the cube and do the 3D effects and all of that without tearing. It was smooth.
Right. Did your movies and your YouTube videos and other things play back without tearing?
Yes.
See, sometimes you get lucky with Compass, other times
I think it had to do with, my guess would be, because on that particular system I was using PCLin. PCLin does some weird tweaks to that stuff that for some reason makes it much more smoother than it would usually be, and I have no idea what they are.
Not necessarily concerning a video driver. There are some patches that they can do. But
I don't think they did tweaks to the driver. I just think they did tweak to some of the default settings to help minimize tearing to the point that my eye couldn't see it. But
maybe they had something tweaked in their Xorg. It could have been their version of Xorg. If they're not using the newest one, that may or may not have an impact upon how the performance is. I do know for a fact that ATI's driver is a complete dickbag with the newer versions of Xorg, and just for the longest time refuses to work because their drivers develop slow as ass, and if it even works at all.
Well, that's one of the real reasons I don't know how you feel on this, Jordan, but I'm kind of I love Xorg. Xorg served us well. But Xorg was never really intended to be being used as it is. It took a while to convince me of this, but I'm honestly a big fan of switching over to Wayland as soon as we can. That's
no, I completely agree there. Xorg was, as far as I understand, was entirely intended to be, you can show graphics, and this was back when graphics were not what they are today, and you can show them over the network, which is awesome. And now it's, let's show 3D everything, and let's show, 120 frames a second, or 600 frames per second.
Yeah, there are honestly times I'm surprised it works at all. Somehow it does, but it's
careful tweaking and hacking of it.
Yeah.
Well,
or not so careful.
It was, though, accustomed to doing OpenGL shit for a long time, including running OpenGL over the network and using a graphics card in the server or in the client and using it for graphics processing power. They even had reliable OpenGL over like a VNC. It was a custom user. I believe it was Turbo or Tiger VNC that they were using for that, along with I think it was OpenGL Vert or a program like that that was able to communicate with the hardware over the network if you had a faster connection. But I mean, X has been accustomed to doing OpenGL for a while, and as far as pushing X too far goes and messing around with a lot of things, I think it's more the problem of not X being capable or not of doing what we're asking it of, but of shitty drivers, shitty coding, loose code, people not cleaning up after themselves now that we have more resources. I mean, you think about it, 5 or 7 years ago, our resources were a fair amount less than they were now. 10 years ago, they were exponentially less than they were now, and we were performing better on them. Look at the 2.4 version of Linux kernel. It can run on a fucking potato. You don't need anything to run a 2.4 kernel.
Well, and on that's one of the things. It's like I like you were saying, VNC is capable of running perfectly smooth in Xorg on a Linux box, but the atypical VNC, I would say 7 to 9 out of 10 users are going to get their hand on because of it has not been tweaked to be optimized for that properly. It's not smooth like it should be. Wayland would fix that, but like you're saying, it can be addressed by other means. But at the end of the day, that's one of those things where we can cry bloody foul and go, well, you're being sloppy, therefore it's your fault that it doesn't work. But at the end of the day, you can't ask the sloppiness of everybody else to be cleaned up to adjust with you. You kind of have to adjust to it. on the 2-point thing, what do we think about the fact that Linux is finally becoming version 3.0?
And it's another version of the kernel. It's more features. It's what it always will be, is expanding more and becoming more and more of what it's supposed to be, hopefully. You know, they just put the Zen hypervisor into the kernel tree directly. Thank God for that. It allows us more open source VM solutions, yay. Which before had to be done either externally as a module or some other means. I didn't dig into it a hell of a lot, but
well, I'm just not sure it's really a 3.0. I mean, it seems more like a 2.7 or a 2.8 than a 3.
Well, okay, it would never be a 2. It would never be a 2.
Major upgrade, and we've had a couple of really decent-sized upgrades in the last few kernel versions, but yeah, like you were saying, it doesn't feel like it's a whole brand new version, major release.
Yeah, it's like, is this some kind of, it's like, it's just one of those, like, and that was honestly one of the big bragging rights about Linux. We've been on version 2 point something for blah, 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 blah. It's like, I'm a little ashamed to see they didn't go with 2 point whatever, because it's not like we were out of 2 points.
Of course, at the same time, we've been on 2 point something for blah, blah, blah. It says we're old and stagnant to a lot of people, possibly.
Yeah, it's like, I'm almost thinking there's more marketing than the actual it's a 3.0 thing going on here. It's like, we're a new version. It's like because everybody else has a new version. We're a new version. I'm like, even though I'm not sure it actually is.
Well, it's kind of like when we went from 2.4 to 2.6. There was a 2.5, but the tradition was that the odd-numbered kernels were special development kernels. For
well, no, that's why I'm saying it. You could easily have just said this is 2.8. You know, you never saw 2.7. That was our beta, and we were busy screwing around with stuff. You know, okay, fine. That's like they could have still kept that because we still had another even number. And then it's 2.8, 0.1, 0.2. You know, yada yada yada. That's like. It's not like there aren't plenty of numbers left in the 2-point numbering system. I think it's more like what Jordan was saying, though. They just wanted a new number, so they didn't look like they were stagnant.
Publicity, probably. But I can tell you that in any distro I build, when I do come out with Acid Linux, I'm probably going to rename it to 2.9. Or 2.8. Probably 8 or 7. It depends on how I want to do it, really.
Well, I mean, if you're a geek, you know, okay, this is 2.8. It's just we're calling it 3.0, and the way Linux works in the kernel, it's not like it's this oh dear God thing. It's just I can see
major version update, and everything still works. Holy crap!
Yeah, I know. The people who I see confusing this most are like novice users or people who are new to Linux are going to be like, oh, but there's just been a version 3.0 and you're still using 2 point something. Your Linux sucks.
You know what, guys? It boils down to this. Ultimately, who gives a shit? I care more about A, Linus is still involved with the kernel, and B, the fact that, you know, stuff is still working in it and more features are being added, like I said earlier. And C, you know, I care more about their code than I do what the hell number they call it, because, like I said before, there is so much loose, uncleaned garbage code that it is destroying the principles of coding in the first place, because one of the big things about coding is proper garbage collection of dirt code. And with how screwed things are right now, we may as well not be doing any, because there's so much broken shit left in code that goes out. It's a problem.
Well, it's like I agree with that. You know, I'm really picky when it comes to code. I mean, honestly, it makes me cringe to look at sloppy code, let alone code that doesn't clean up after itself. It's like when I look at it, it's like I'm like, ew. Yes. But I mean, do you ever, like you're saying, you're glad Linus is still involved. I mean, do we honestly ever see Linus not being involved? I think Linus is going to be coding from beyond the grave, you know?
No, I think he'll leave as soon as he's done and says, well, I'm going to go, I'm fucking off to go do something else because you guys have butchered my code so bad, you all deserve to be shot. Because that's going to happen one day.
Well, if that happens, you think he'd just go over to another project like Minix or something, or do you think he'd and just go try and create something different, or you think he'd just kind of retire and poke out?
Well, the trademark's his, so he would just walk off and say, this is what Linux is supposed to be. I'm taking control, and, you know, you guys are out of here. You're done with this. I mean...
there's no reason he can't do that, but I'm thinking if Linux forks a lot, and forks are great for Linux, but I'm not sure Linux could survive a kernel fork, because then you'd have Linux and Linux, and it wouldn't be Linux anymore. One of the real advantages of Linux is no matter what Linux you're running, you're still running Linux. If the kernel itself forked, that would no longer be true.
Well, take a look at what Android does. They're pretty much a very highly customized kernel. It ain't standard. They're not running pure Git tree code, my friend. They're running some custom shit.
They're running some custom stuff, but the importance there is that the Android tree is separate from the kernel itself. That is their Linux kernel.
Fork.
What about you, Jordan? You got 2 cents on that hypothetical one day Linus gets pissed and Linux forks?
I don't know. I don't see it. Well, I don't see it forking from his point of view. I would see, if anything, him stepping up and saying, "This is still my project," but it's just not in his nature.
Well, and you know, like you say, it's not in his nature. Linus gets as I understand it, Linus is like, I don't even know the man. It's like I'm putting words in his mouth, and I don't even know the man. But the reputation that is conveyed about Linus is he knows it, but he's very hands off. I mean, he's probably the person most responsible for Tux being the mascot, but he refused to have anything to do with choosing the mascot. But he's brought up he liked penguins.
I'm going to stop you on the not involved.
I've read a lot of his emails, and he is extremely straightforward and to the point, and almost to the point of being really, really brutally blunt. If he wants something one certain way, he's going to tell you, and he's going to push for it, because he seems to be a bit stubborn just from reading it. But it's always in the best interest. I mean, I've read hundreds and hundreds of his emails.
Well, but yeah, it's like the things he cares about. Yes, and you're right. Hands off is the wrong approach to make. The things he cares about, like you said, he'll whack you over the head with a sledgehammer if he has to. But if he doesn't directly care about it, he doesn't voice an opinion at all.
Well, what he cares about, all right, he does a fair amount of kernel work and whatnot still. But I will tell you this, if he does not like something, there's a reason why it's not in the kernel, and there's a reason why things have taken as long to get in the kernel as they have, because people, exactly like I said, leave their garbage and shit around in their code, and he's like, get your shit, get it out of here, and if you want it anywhere near my damn kernel, you better clean it the fuck up.
Well, and that's a good stance to take at the kernel level, because if that's running at the kernel level, it screws the whole system up. If it's just add-on pat, it's just screwing up those applications and those things. You don't want that in the kernel until it's cleaned up, and there's nothing wrong with that. And usually why people may bitch and moan about that, Linus does have a lot of respect in that regard. People, like you're saying, he's brutal, but they understand he's brutal with reason.
Well, Linus doesn't do anything without a reason.
Say that again, Jordan.
Brutal, but right in most cases.
Usually.
Well, no, that's why I'm like, I mean, I guess it's possible he could leave at some point, but that would surprise me if Linus, I mean, I
think if anything else, if there was to be a fork, it would be a sect of developers would say, forget this, we're leaving, and they would go fork something else. Because
they would leave Linus, and honestly, I wouldn't see the Linux community following them. I mean, it's like it kind of be,
so people that would follow them. It wouldn't be a large group of people.
Yeah, well, because it's like I said, they're splitting it at the kernel level and creating this. Basically, nothing's going to work universally anymore. That's just a bad thing all around.
Just to throw back out there, this is all entirely hypothetical.
Yeah, no. Yes, we are in tinfoil hat land. We're exploring a theoretical what if, which will probably never happen world. Yeah, for those of you who have come in midstream here, it's like, yeah. Now, what were we on? Oh yeah, we were on UI stuff. There's a resistance over here on, in some ways, on the Linux side towards the big shiny button. I've seen some distros that get close, and one of the things that has happened in the last 2 to 3 years is we have a sufficient number of distros that I would feel perfectly comfortable giving my grandma, who knows nothing about computers, and feel pretty confident that without her calling me every 5 minutes, she could use the system. You know, those systems do now exist. There is a resistance from some users for, like, they find offense to a user-friendly system. I personally don't, because I don't want to get in a boxing match with my system more than anyone else. Do you think that those people are kind of a hindrance to Linux adoption and growth, that they think it needs to be geeky and intimidating? I mean, I'm trying to understand what you lose by simplifying the UI, as long as you can still get in there and make it however you want. You know.
All right, Jordan, do you mind if I take on this one?
Sure.
By all means, go for it.
All right. Here's the deal on that one, right? You want to make it work for an end user, because all right, I'm in the PC world now, and I do a lot of computer work right now. Now, Jordan, you've done a lot of desktop work in the past, and still, mess around with a Windows machine every day. Here's the thing: you want a system that's easy to use. It means catering for the dickbag Windows user. What does that mean? It needs to look exactly fucking like Windows. You need to push the start button and you get a start menu. You need to go to My Computer and you see your drives. You need to go to My Documents and you see your shit. That's the way they want it to look. That's the way they want it to see it. The reason why the Linux guys don't like that, the diehard Linux fans don't want to see Windows when they boot up their computer. They don't want to see any semblance of it. They don't want to see any iota of it. What they want is their traditional GNOME the way it's always been, or the advancement in GNOME that's coming that they've discussed, or the XSpace or KDE or whatever distro you're using. They want to see that the same way it's always been, or they want to see the improvements that are coming for that project. They don't want to see it looking like Windows. Bottom line, you want to make it easy to use, you're going to have to throw that out the window and make it look exactly like Windows for it to work right. Otherwise,
well, I will agree with that dead hard, because I never really had an interest in using the KDE systems that were trying to look exactly like XP, and no, even that made my skin crawl. Although, I mean, if we're honest, KDE looks a lot like Windows, but that's because Windows has started using KDE code.
It's not even close to Windows, dude. It's resemblance of it, very, very a vague resemblance of Windows, but it is nothing like Windows.
So you think the only way so you honestly think it like literally has to look I don't think, that's the thing, I don't think it has to look identical to be user friendly. As a matter of fact, it shouldn't look identical, because then that becomes confusing. You start looking for a C drive and an E drive and a yada yada. And I've seen distros that do that, where they literally have a simulated C drive and a D drive and an A drive, and I'm like, you're not doing them any favors, because that's not how the Linux file system works. Everything's based off of a root. You know, it's in the mount folder or the MNT, depending how the distro set it up. You know, you need to get them used to that's where it is, because that's actually a lot more powerful.
But if at face value it doesn't look almost exactly alike, like if your start menu button doesn't exactly say start, but it looks close to it. The window borders look close. The colors are close. That kind of shit. If it's close enough to where they can pick it up and they think it's Windows, and they start looking and say, oh wait, this is a little bit different, I can get used to this. Okay, you can gradually start them from somewhere, but if it doesn't look that way, you're fucked. I'm sorry, but that's what happens, because I know the Windows user, I know what the average computer user does, and I see it almost every damn day of my life, and if it isn't almost perfectly close, and if they're not entirely willing to learn, the buttons being in a different place, or the icons looking different, or the theme being different, they won't even touch the shit. They won't.
why I know a few Windows users that way. You know, my bread and stock is dealing with small business users, and them at the end of the day, the only thing I have to tell them is that thing's like this, that thing's like that, go have fun, and they never really ask me questions. Like, they're like, okay, I'm cool. It's like, because they're using, you'd be surprised how many of them are already using Firefox and Thunderbird, and those icons look identical. You know, it's still Firefox and Thunderbird. It's still, you know, there's this, Windows has adopted, instead of having the old Show Desktop button, it's really funny. The new Windows Show Desktop button looks a lot like the one you find in most, like that widget that's in KDE. I don't know on that. Jordan?
I've met a lot of users on both sides of that. I've met, mainly it's home users that refuse to use something if it's even the slightest bit different from what they're familiar with. My dad, for example, and I don't mean to put him on the spot, but he, in the past, has said, I don't care what browser I'm using as long as I am able to have my favorites in the exact order that I want them.
Yeah.
And there are people on the other side, mostly in the business world, and I've done a lot of small, medium, and not so much, but some larger businesses where if you point them in the direction of, here's your browser, get on the internet, here's your email client, usually they can figure it out because they're getting paid to figure it out.
That's the thing. You're talking about two different types of groups of users. The business user, which since they're getting paid to work in that environment, in their subconscious, it is programmed in there. They know that, okay, my job is to learn to use your system that you have put in front of me as an employee. At home, it's my fucking computer, and I want it to look this way. And if it doesn't look this way, or isn't almost exactly close to the point where I can transition, I don't want to touch it.
Well, but see, that particular user, these are the people, and I know the person you're talking about. This is the person that stands up in front of you and goes, "They should have just stopped development at Windows 95. I knew where everything was." It's like.
My parents were that way, and they learned to XP just fine, even though it was different.
Honestly, those users are, I don't see them ever being happy with Vista/7/Windows 8, because going from XP to, especially if you skip over Vista and 7, it's different. And like you say, for that particular user, anything different is bad.
For those people, you show them classic mode, they use it for a few months. You show them the regular mode, they say, oh, okay, this is in a different spot. This is in a different spot. I get used to this. Point is that even though they seem totally different, they still function the same, and they're not different enough to the point where they don't get it, because guess what? Control panel looks like control panel. My computer looks like my computer. The shit's still in the same relative place. The star menu is organized slightly different, but it's close enough to where they can get to it and get to their shit. Granted, this is also the reason why my parents are still staying on XP. Now you take the GNOME XP theme and you take a GNOME environment or an XFCE environment and you put the panel icons in the same place and you put the theme in the shit and you put your start button in there and your icons and everything in there. They're not going to know the fucking difference, and they're not going to care, because the minute differences that there are, it's going to be, oh, well, this is a different program, and this opens differently. It's like, okay, fine, I get it, I can get used to it. But the thing is, you can say, well, all those users are different, and, you know, technically they don't count. The other thing about that is, guess what? They're still the people buying a fucking computer. They're still part of the percentage that matters. And every minuscule iota of a millionth of a percent that Linux can get on the desktop and the server counts, because on the desktop we have jack shit of nothing, and if we don't, we're dead.
I know. I gotta disagree with you there, because I've looked at some of the unofficial statistics, and I don't know where the hell this jack shit of nothing, less than 1% numbers coming from. You know,
real life.
Say it again.
Real life. it comes down to this. You walk into the computer store. What do you see on the computer? Windows. You pay the money, you buy the box, you plug it in, you turn it on.
Okay, but you are aware that like 8% of the end user systems that Hewlett-Packard sold last year were Linux computers.
Right, those were the Linux people that deliberately knew what Linux was, deliberately looked from a computer for them, and then deliberately bought that machine. That wasn't the average person walking into the store and having a look at a computer and saying, I might want to try Linux instead of this. Okay, those are also some of the lowest spec machines available on their sites, as is with Dell and most of the other manufacturers. The only other manufacturers that offer higher spec computers at the prices that they do, like System 76 and whatnot, they cost a fortune more than a Windows computer with comparable specs, considerably. So,
I agree with you. One of the things Linux desperately needs, but I don't think if anybody ever does this experiment, because really this is going to take some private rich person who has money to flush down the toilet, who's just willing to stick to it and spend $2 to $10 million to make it start to stick. But one of the things Linux does desperately need is what you're talking about, which is an OEM that is saying, we are going to make Linux computers. We're going to get Best Buy, Walmart's, or, this is our mission statement, getting them on the shelf and making them stick. But if they do that, they need to be selling Linux computers, not dumbed down, turned into a system for grandma. They need to be selling Linux computers for Linux users at a price that is on par with everything else that's being sold, which means they need to be making them in runs of blah, blah, and blah, so that they're getting the quantity discounts and everything else. That's
$400 to $500 endpoint price range, fully loaded, codecs installed, all the non-free software installed, decent graphics card, 128-bit GDDR3 memory, dual-core processor, and 4 gigabytes of RAM. Done fucking deal.
Exactly.
Decent case and power supply.
And if you make enough of them, that's perfectly obtainable. It's just that's not a small price tag to do the minimum quantities to do it at that right price.
I can call up a manufacturer and they will make me a computer for $150 to $200 a piece that I can sell for $500 if I agree to do 50 of them. Some will do 25.
You and I should talk after the show. If you, especially if they'll let you create especially if they'll let you send them like a CAD thing of the casing shape and everything you want, so you can actually give it some
They'll just sell me their white box case. I can say, I want this chipset, this part, this part, this part, this part, this part, this part, done. And they'll say, okay, fine, fuck it, we'll make it, no big deal. You order this quantity, we'll suck your cock. We don't care.
I haven't seen white boxes that aren't pretty damn ugly. Have you seen some?
I don't mean actual as in white. I mean
I know what you mean, but they're like that ugly case like System 76 stocks and stuff.
Alright, here's what a good computer case looks like. Plain, sturdy, no frills, no bullshit. It looks nice because it's a business-looking computer. It's black or white.
I'm with you. That's one of the reasons I like the design of the ThinkPads. They've got basic black down very well. It's very utilitarian. It's not trying to put on a prom dress. It's got that Hummer beauty thing going for it. I do like that character. It's just there's when you try and dress Hummer ugly up and make it look like a prom queen, you wind up with the Hummer too, and it just doesn't work. It's just
that's why you don't buy chink shit stuff from Inwin or Apevia or Apex or any of the other companies that are making chink shit at a low price that is literally chink shit. That's why you don't go looking after those. See, for me, what I do when I build a customer computer, whether it's Windows or Linux or what have you, I walk over to, I drive over to CompUSA and I buy an ultra power supply and an ultra case that looks good and is basic. It's decent enough quality to where it won't be a problem, it won't fall apart. I put a gigabyte board in there, a good Intel processor, a decent graphics card, enough RAM, and a good hard drive to where that computer is going to last 5 years before there's a problem. And they don't have an issue with that. And the thing is, until recently, I was able to get these really nice gigabyte boards at a cheap price to where I could rebuild anybody's computer for $300 or under, sometimes $250 if they didn't need a graphics card. It was not a problem to do. And it's just, it's almost not even cost anymore. It's just getting the shit out on the market. If I had let's see if I could order a bunch of those PCs at $150 to $250 a piece, right? So say I get enough money to order 25 of them and do it. I could get out there, I could walk into a computer store and say, hey, if you knock this up $100, I will sell this to you at my cost, with or barely above my cost. If you market these and these are successful, will you go into an agreement with me to buy these in quantity? And if I walked into a chain and talked to a manager, they would probably agree, if they were a decent store, to try and sell them off if I gave them a quantity of them and offered them a business agreement. Now, is that optimistic speak? Is that speaking optimistically in best hopes? Yeah, probably. But the point
and so that's the thing. I would agree you'd be able to do that with any mom and pop, and they'd be happy to do it. But if you did that, like going into a chain like a Best Buy or a Walmart or a Fry's, usually the local manager doesn't have the authority to do something that's good for him or herself. And that's a little, it's strange, but that's also the reality. Which is just weird. Look who showed up.
I don't know. It's worth a shot. I mean, the big thing is if somebody had the capital to go into it with, or if I found a nice investment.
Well, no, it's like one of the things, unfortunately, and this is why I was saying it's multi-million. The systems are not the big cost. The big cost is actually the advertising. And that all of us geeks, if there was a good quality, not insulting to us system on the market that had Linux stock, even us diehard geeks that love to build our own, we'd still buy laptops, portable systems, and even our lower end desktops if it was cost effective enough from that manufacturer, if it came with the distro we prefer to use anyways, without a bunch of crapware on top of it. We would do it. But
the easiest thing for us to do is get a deal with an e-recycling company.
That's the thing. We're also all geeks and we know how this undermarket works, so it'd have to be a really good deal. But to sell that to the average user, you have to tell the average user it's available, explain to them why they should choose it over OS X and Windows. And I'm sorry, at the end of the day, that's a marketing campaign. One of the reasons Android stuck is because we have all these Droid Does commercials in the ever-expanding marketplace and all this. It had nothing to do with the open philosophy or any of this stuff, or that it was Linux, like you said, a variant of Linux, but still Linux. It had to do with the marketing campaign that said, look at all the shit it does, the competitor doesn't. And there's not like there isn't plenty of that stuff in Linux to do. But
well, here's the big thing, right? As much as I hate to say it, if anybody gets Linux on the store shelves again, it will be Canonical. But first, Canonical needs to get their heads out of their assholes, fix their shit, fix their bugs, make good code, better business decisions, and increase their marketing and go up to the businesses and corporations and say, hey, you got these programs on your server, you got this server OS that is providing this, this, and this, your mail server you're doing, blah, 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 blah. We can do it cheaper, we can do it better, we can give you better support and better hardware at a much lower cost to you than what you're paying now. That's much longer.
That's the other thing that would need to happen. If you're selling to not average on systems, they're going to need better support than the forums. They're going to want a number to call and go, where's button X? They're going to want that, and that does cost money. You have to pay somebody in India to sit in those telemarketer seats.
Well, the other big thing is that the forum-based support you don't do corporate with. That doesn't happen. You can, but that's mostly community. That would be mostly community people within the corporation doing that.
Yes.
The big thing with Canonical is that the forum support is basically turning into shit, because almost every problem that I've had, I've gone looking in their forums. And I've seen that they go unanswered or have been given bullshit replies and nobody cares. Which is partly why I'm on Arch at the minute, because a lot of the people not only give a shit, but they're smart. They go out and they fix the code that's broken. They do the research. They try to find an answer for people that actually works.
No, that's the thing. The strength of any distro, son, is the strength of its community at actually answering your questions. If I'm in a distro, I don't care how good it is. If I ask an honest question and the answer I get is, well, if you're not geeky enough to know that, you're an idiot. I'm like, you know, just because I'm not that particular type of geek doesn't mean I'm a complete fucking moron. You know, it's that is one of the things I hate in Jordan. How, you know, I mean, do you see this that often too, where they have like that holier than thou to them?
With a lot of different distros communities, I have seen that a very long time ago, and then starting up within the last 2 years in certain communities. But the majority of those communities that do it have a lot of documentation that it's very easy to work your way through. Arch, for example, there have been some times where they have been harsh. I've seen on their IRC channel they can be a little rough if you haven't read the documentation yet, which they have really good documentation. I've said this a lot of times before. They have the right to say, read the documentation first, please, because
well, no. Whoa, James, fix your mic.
Christ.
Choose, James. Fix your mic.
Am I being loud right now?
You're better now.
I just shit a brick not that long ago.
Dude, you were like Cybertron blowing out my eardrums. I don't know what the heck you did to his. It's like
whatever. Point is, it's fixed.
Okay, no, but like you're saying, if there's clear documentation on it and they haven't read it, it's called they write a simple message. Here's the answer you need, and put a link. You know, they don't get snotty. They don't go, hey, asshole, read the documentation first. Because a complete noob doesn't even know that exists. It's an honest mistake. You point them there, they know it's there now. You know, that's...
And I think a lot of that has to do with, if you've pointed somebody there a few hundred times, a few thousand times, that I guess it gets old for them.
Well, but see, this is something, unfortunately, the average user does. I know people that call Microsoft to figure out how to put a floppy in. You know, and every single time, you know, where's that floppy drive again? You know, it's like...
Give them an internet appliance. Done. Those are the people that cloud computing is the best for, because you own a piece of shit thin client computer. You turn it on. It saves your login information. It goes to the login, you know, to your home screen that has all your shit in it. Everything down to the word processor is stored on the cloud, online. You don't have to deal with it at all. They do have some cloud-based OSs like that out right now. I was tooling around with the Proxmox VM server solution, and they had a downloadable VM for that somebody had put together for one of those web-based cloud OSs. And, you know, that's perfect for people, or even in a corporation, where they don't know really much about a computer at all. All they need to do is crack open their word processor or their company application and their web browser or whatever, and punch in some information, and that's all they need to do with the computer. That's so great for people who don't know how to use a computer and who don't have the time, who do not have the time to learn, and do not have the expertise to seek out somebody or understand that there are cheap or free solutions out there on the internet, even via Google, that will teach them how to do what they need to do. I mean, I had to fix a guy's computer the other day who didn't know what the space bar was because he'd never used a typewriter before. And there are people out there like that. See, the thing is, okay, what the computer industry doesn't understand is that even in this day and age, there are people who don't know how to use a computer, they know nothing about it, and what they need to do when they're sold a computer is have a basic manual that teaches them, here's the keyboard, here's how you use it. You know, when they turn it on, it teaches them how to use the computer and give them enough of the basics to where they can print, they can copy and paste, they can type, they know how to do research, you know, things like that. Even if it's a link to a friggin' YouTube video, you've got to get somebody enough of the basics and documentation when they go to install the OS or set up the OS that will teach them what they need to know in order to use it. Because otherwise they've just wasted their money on buying the technology.
Well, no, and that actually goes back to something I think we said, God, it must have been, I think it was last year sometime. Like, you, me, and James were, James, do you remember when that was that we were talking about, like, every Linux distro should come with a tutorial? It's like it launches the thing and walks you through how to use stuff. You know, just a 101 for dummies. All of us will ignore it, but Hello?
Can you hear me?
Now you're really low. I'm hesitant to ask you to turn up. That's better.
How about now?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Alright. Anyway, so, yes, I do remember that. And I do think it would be a good idea, yes.
Yeah.
Although someone needs to develop some kind of library for that to work, to provide those green overlays and arrows and stuff like that.
And it needs to adapt to wherever you've moved everything, because one of the variables, especially on a Linux box, is you really have no earthly idea where any of that stuff is. It could be anywhere, but it should.
Tutorial video. Tutorial video design. Oh, sorry. Dirt lag.
Now that might be able to be done because with like stuff like GNOME, you would know where something is, and with like GNOME 3, you wouldn't even need to, because I don't even think you could change where most of the stuff is. But I don't really think that that's necessarily a priority. I think that these tutorials should be done basically when the user first installs the OS, or as another option, have another user that they log into to start the tutorial that's already set up a way that the tutorial understands. I don't think that they should, if it's hard to do, create a whole library for understanding everything. Oh my god.
Okay, easiest thing to do. Tutorial video on desktop that says play me. They double click, it opens in a
it's
media
not
player.
interactive.
It doesn't need to be. They just sit
It
and
really,
watch.
really helps. It really helps.
Yeah, I
helps,
know.
but it
There's already bunches of videos, and I do think that they should include a Play Me video that has that, but interactive tutorials are superior in many ways, because or else they're not going to remember what they saw.
For fuck's sake, man, it's a start. Alright, you gotta start somewhere. You can't get magic and gold out of shit. I mean, I'm sorry. That's the way it works. I mean, seriously, if somebody doesn't do something like this in the Linux world, it can just go straight to hell for all I care, because if I can't make it useful for the end user to stick in their computer and use, fuck it.
Okay.
Now, do you love or hate Linux there?
I love what it can do. I hate what it's doing right now.
Okay, then. And on that, what the F? Jordan, do you have time for more time, or should we top off there?
I'm about to catch on fire. It's like 90 degrees in here.
Okay.
It's hard for me to, yeah.
We may pick more of this up next week, but so Jordan doesn't melt like the Wicked Witch. And honestly, I think your computer's getting overheated because your camera's been getting fuzzier and fuzzier as we go, or something.
It's probably fogging out.
Yeah, you're like all pixelated. That's fog. It's
My
that.
air conditioning is out for those who I didn't mention it earlier, so it's hot.
Yeah, Jordan's in like a room that's approaching 50°C and rising. It's like. Okay, so I guess we'll stop there and see y'all next week. I didn't mention your name. What name do you want to be known as over here?
You can just call me Sans Stewie or Sean. I really don't give a shit either way.
Okay. And on that, peace out all, and we'll see y'all next week.
Sounds good to me.
There you go.